Welcome back to This Day in Scottish History. I'm your host, Colin MacDonald. Today, we travel back to a pivotal and tragic day in Scotland's medical and social history, December 23rd, 1831, when the second cholera pandemic reached Scotland. This devastating disease would go on to claim thousands of lives and leave an indelible mark on public health. The second cholera pandemic, which raged from 1829 to 1851, was a global crisis that had already swept across Asia, Europe, and North America by the time it arrived in Scotland. The disease, caused by the bacterium Vibrio cholerae, was transmitted through contaminated water and food, leading to severe diarrhea, dehydration, and often death within hours. By late 1831, reports of cholera's relentless advance were spreading fear across the United Kingdom. The disease had made its way from India, travelling along major trade routes and through densely populated cities. On this day in 1831, cholera was confirmed in Sunderland, a port in northeastern England, and soon after, the first cases were reported in Scotland. Edinburgh and Glasgow, being bustling industrial cities with poor sanitation and overcrowding, became hotspots for the outbreak. In a matter of weeks, cholera spread rapidly across Scottish cities and towns. Poor urban sanitation was a significant factor. Most working class neighbourhoods had open sewers, shared water pumps, and little understanding of the disease's transmission. Initially, many believed cholera was caused by miasma or bad air rather than contaminated water. The epidemic wreaked havoc on Scotland's population. Glasgow was hit particularly hard, with over 10,000 cases reported and nearly 4,000 deaths by the end of the outbreak. Edinburgh saw thousands of infections, with the disease devastating the poorest communities. Rural areas were not spared either, though the spread was slower due to lower population density. The sheer scale of the epidemic overwhelmed the medical infrastructure. Hospitals struggled to cope, and the lack of effective treatments, antibiotics wouldn't be discovered for over a century, meant that mortality rates were staggeringly high. Despite the tragedy, the arrival of cholera in Scotland acted as a wake-up call for the government, medical professionals, and society at large. The epidemic catalyzed critical changes in public health. Municipal authorities began investing in cleaner water supplies, improved sewage systems, and better urban planning. These efforts, although slow to materialize, were critical in reducing future outbreaks. Temporary cholera boards were set up to manage the crisis, a precursor to more permanent public health institutions in the decades to follow. Public education on hygiene and cleanliness began to take root, although understanding of cholera's bacterial origin remained decades away. The human stories behind the numbers were heartbreaking. Entire families were wiped out and communities were shattered. The disease did not discriminate, but the poor bore the brunt of the epidemic due to their living conditions. Mass graves became a grim reality in cities like Glasgow, where burial grounds overflowed. By the time the second cholera pandemic ended in the early 1850s, Scotland had been forever changed. The epidemic highlighted the inequalities and inadequacies of 19th century urban life, laying the groundwork for future reforms. For many Scots, however, the memory of cholera remained a haunting reminder of vulnerability in the face of nature's power. As we reflect on this day in 1831, we remember the resilience of those who endured one of the darkest chapters in Scottish history. Their suffering ultimately spurred progress, paving the way for a healthier and more equitable society. Thank you for joining us today on This Day in Scottish History. We'll be back tomorrow with another story from Scotland's rich and varied past. I'm Colin MacDonald, urging you to stay safe, cherish your health, and until next time, haste you back.